I'm going to invite the Dean of the Faculty, Professor Ek Tang Sapwathana, to provide some opening remarks for us.
Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to everyone. It is my utmost pleasure to welcome you to ISIS Public Forum on Thailand's youth movement and political directions in search of a common future. Normally, when we organize events in this room, we would look for a full house as a sign of success. This time, during the ongoing COVID period, we have deliberately kept this room not so full, with social distancing and other precautions in place. So a mark of success for us this day is not to have too large a crowd. Having said that, it has been more than 7 months since ISIS Thailand held an in-person public forum. So I am personally delighted to return to face-to-face format where we could be in the same room with distancing and the precautions. In addition to us here, this forum is also being broadcast live via Facebook, which is quite an issue in Thailand today. We have had more than 10,000 Facebook page views. So let me also warmly welcome our audience near and far who are tuning on via the ISIS Facebook live stream. Moreover, this event is recorded and it will be subsequently be available for viewing via Facebook and YouTube later this week. I think our tech staff, Giant Digital Media, thank them for enabling us to do this. It is common knowledge that Thailand's political temperature is rising. This has been many protests among university and even high school students in many provinces in recent weeks. These protests have demanded a reset of Thailand's democratic arrangements with a new constitution and new elections. Young Thai protesters also want the authorities to stop intimidation and harassment as a way to silence them. The authorities have said that they want to listen and are open to discussion. Thailand's political situation is delicate and combustible, to say the least. We are here today to foster and facilitate a better understanding between the two sides, between student aspirations and grievances and government prerogatives and preferences. We are here because I believe Thailand is in search for a common future that can be accepted by all sides through mutual respect and accommodation. Dialogue and discussion of differences in opinions and interests are the only way we can move forward. The lack or absence of dialogue will not allow us to find a common future together. I would like to thank the Frederick Naumann Foundation for sponsoring this forum. FNF has been relying partners to ISIS Thailand in promoting dialogue and collective understanding in Thailand. I also would like to thank our three student speaker, Ms. Sukriya Watna Yuwat, the co-founder Free Gender Thailand, Free People Thailand, first year undergrad student Chulalongkorn University, Mr. Yuthachai Phern Khai Saan, Freedom เกษตรศาสตร์ Group Secretary Manager for the Flash Mobs เกษตรศาสตร์ University and Miss ยานิสาวราลักษณ์สพงศ์ Co-founder of ธรรมศาสตร์sorry เตรียมอุดม against dictatorship เตรียมอุดมศึกษา School Bangkok and I would like to thank to อาจารย์เจต โทนวนิก the chairman Faculty of Law College of ASEAN Scholar former Constitution drafter and คุณจตุรงค์ฉายแสง former Deputy Prime Minister and former Minister of Education and also former student leader in 1970s. I hope you will enjoy this discussion and let me turn to floor over อาจารย์ทิตินันท์ Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Janek. Let me invite speakers onto the stage. Let me start with the students. We're missing one in traffic, but Sugriya, could you take a seat up here? I think your name is that one. So second chair there. And then Yarisa will be here, the two after me. And then Yutachai later. So we've kind of, in view of the political developments recently, we have reached out to some student leaders among them. And these two, Sugriya and Yarisa, from Chulalongkorn, but Sugriya is from the Faculty of Education. I think you have their bios, a little bit of their bios. So she's third year here, and she's been involved in the activities that we've seen in the news recently, student-led activities. Yarisa just graduated from a high school nearby. It's one of the top high schools in Thailand called Thriamudom. She's now a first-year student with our faculty. She also has been involved in the high school activities, political activities. And even though she's first year Jula, she's been helping and coordinating, working with her classmates at the high school at Thriamudom. So I think there's a couple of Thriamudom high school students here as well. We'll wait for Kun Yutachai. He's on his way. He's from Kasetsad University, so also reaching out to another university. There's a bit different universities that have been active politically in recent weeks. In addition to these ones in Bangkok, we also have had universities across all over Thailand involved. So this is just a taste of just some flavors that we can hear today. I would like to now also invite Dr. Jet Thonavanik, please to take up your chair here next to me, and then Kun Jaturon Chai Sang, please, Kun Jaturon kap that chair. So Dr. Jet has been, he's a law expert. He's been a constitution drafter. He got his PhD from Stanford in law, and he will discuss, I think, the constitutional implications, issues related to this political activism from the students that we have been seeing. And I would like to ask Kun Jaturon as a last speaker to give us some reflections. I mean, he can talk about many things. He's been the education minister. He's been the deputy prime minister. He's been on cabinet over the years. But for today, I would like to ask him about his own reflections from the 1970s. As a former student activist, he was based at Chiang Mai University in the early and mid-70s. He also fled to the jungles, so to speak, after the crackdown in 1976. But today, we would like to hear from him what he sees as the similarities and differences from the last major student movement back then in the 1970s and now in 2020s. So, Sugriya, for the three students, I thought very simple. And, we've heard a lot about this. We see this in the news a lot. And I thought we could just focus on very simple, kind of indicative buttons of why Thai students, young people are protesting these days. Why? And why now? Right? And why now? So I think that's a lot of people around here, and I also want to, again, warmly welcome our audiences in the region, Southeast Asia, but also all the way halfway across the world in North America. A lot of people are tuning in. This is on Facebook Live. So a lot of people want to know, why are you protesting, young people, young Thai students? And why now? Thailand's been like this, up and down for some years. And then third, are you doing this on your own initiative? I mean, is this really your own ideas, your own thinking, your own effort? Has it been manipulated? Anybody asked you to do it? Anyone co-organizing with you, putting you up to it? And then finally, what do you see as a way ahead? What would you like to see happen? Okay, so maybe we'll go 10 minutes, and then I'll come to Yarisa. We'll start with you, Sugriya. What do you think? Why and why now, to begin with?
Okay, thank you. Okay, for your information, I grew up with the junta government. 6 years passed. And now I'm 21 years old. It's 30% of my lifetime. I don't want to be here like the head or the co-founder of any movement, because I just student. I want to study. The democratic movement is not my point, but I'm here because I cannot bear anymore. We saw last 2 years, we saw chance and hope with FFP party that with Mr. Thanathorn, who is the leader of one of the party that I can trust, that he will engage the junta, but the hope is gone. It's gone now. Now it's our turn, our student turn. As in the history of Thailand, when the dictatorship is rise, university student, also student in high school, against them. So now it's our turn. Is the exploration of like the constitution and the state harassment to people. Also the authoritarian government performance during like past 6 years is the oppressed that Thailand democratic, like whether it's 5 or 10 years next, I don't know what will happen if the student not come out. And if someone are manipulating us, it's a junta one. Because we cannot bear this anymore. So some people say we are brainwashed. I want to say first, we have to understand them. Over 80 years in Thailand, people was like grow up with education system that people cannot criticize or analyze the information. But now it's in communication and information era that we grow up. We cannot read. We can read book. We can read information from the internet. We also have a good teacher, and we can analyze them with interconnectedness around the world. We're not only Thai citizen, we are also world citizen now. But the education system before us cannot do that. Now internet can do it. And this is why we can connect to each other by social network, on Facebook or Twitter, and we are connect. We come out together with no one behind us, no one manipulate us. One thing, if you don't know, Thai junta government trying to teach us something called like
the 12 values after the coup. We had the 12 values together with a song.
Yeah, the violent to value devised by the dictatorship, but it fall. Actually, what is if someone can manipulate student or university student, one like, I'm sorry, even junta government cannot do it. No one can do it, right? Okay. What is the next if like the government don't care about our movement? I have to say they are respond our movement. Last 2 months, many people try to raise the demands to the government about the constitution or the monarchy. But the government or any organization don't care about it. Since last 18 July, the first protest of free youth, even Mr. Prayut Chan-o-cha, he also care about it. If he don't care about it, he would not send the police or any like government officer to abuse us. After the protest, the government and the Senate are trying to compromise with us with the committee or many action for compromise, for give some order. Also in the Ministry of Education, they're also trying to talk with us, but it's too late. Now we got strong demand with 3 demands, and now is he have to do more than listen to us. He have to do the people order, the people demand. We still have, don't worry, we not burn out like in a few months because we have the plan A to C to do with the junta government. And what I saw in Thailand, for me now, I cannot see Thailand future like exactly because it's have the trap called constitution. Now it's a big trap, big problem that we cannot move because it's a big problem. We cannot choose the prime minister by our voice because we got the Senate from this constitution, and many rules or many things in this constitution is the big problems. I think you can like many information that why many organizations in Thailand trying to fix this, but the junta try to stop them with many abusing, even with like 3 years old kindergarten, like the parent post the picture of her like raise 3 finger sign, and junta also sent the police officer to her house, things like that. That this government do it. Okay, in 3 years, I want. It's not what I see, but it's what I hope. I hope to see that we have justified constitutional, that the people can work for the prime minister themselves. Student who was oppressed by the authoritarian have the right to vote because now your age or the student age not ไม่สามารถแบบ
Not eligible.
not like not able to world. And in 5 years, I wish for the progress of economic. It's very important for the worker in Thailand because the junta government cannot manage this. And it's the worst thing that now they affect to them. And more equality in every social dimension with the gender words. I still work on like sex worker for I want to make the sex worker in the system because now sex worker in Thai is illegal, is still illegal. It's one of the point that in 5 years I want to see equality about this. Also the education in an author social dimension. In 10 years, I'm 30 in 10 years. Now, if I am teacher, I can teach my student what is this, what is the democracy, what is a dictator. So I think my student will lead the movement if we have to do the movement next. And I also trust in Thai students now that they can lead Thailand to the point that is the win point with equality. I want to tell you, democracy is not our goal, but equality is. Democracy is only the tools that we will get the equality. And junta or Mr. Prayut Chan-o-cha cannot give us equality in every social dimension. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Sukriya. It sounded to me like you talked from your own mind. So a few points you mentioned, and before I mention them, I think that we should mention the 3 demands that you've had, which is to dissolve parliament, stop the intimidation and harassment, and then to draft a new constitution, right? It's a new constitution. And then I think there are 2 no's, that the no national unity government and no military coup, right? And then there's something more controversial, which is the 10-point manifesto that was enumerated the other day, earlier this month. You mentioned, so I think from what you said, the coup initially was not supposed to last too long, right? Because it was the 12 values, and then it was not supposed to last 5 years, 6 years. And then the other point I think that you brought across is that with this constitution, no matter what kind of election or how many times we have the elections, you end up with the same kind of government anyway, right, with this constitution. You keep talking about the junta, and we don't have the junta anymore. The NCPO is gone. It's a new government. Why you keep talking about the junta?
Because it's
Continuation, perpetuation.
It's continuation from the coup d'etat last 6 years. Mr. Prayut Chan-o-cha with his team, coup d'etat the last government, and he designed the constitutional 2017 to this constitutional have many problems because his team, his lawyer write it for he to be the prime minister, like the Senate. 250 Senate can vote, and all of them was established, was like
selected
by Mr. Prayut Chan-o-cha to select Mr. Prayut Chan-o-cha to be the prime minister. things like that. And it will be like over and over to next election. Is the Senate still can select the prime minister. And if it will be this circle, Mr. Barichan Osha or the junta is not like the team or the government, but is the cycle, is the tool, it's วิธีการ
Okay, so like the regime, same regime.
Yeah, it's the regime. It's the junta regime now. It's not Mr. Barichan Osha.
Okay, thank you very much. Yuthachai Piengsisan just came through traffic from across town. So I'm sure he wants to apologize for being late, but now we come to you a little bit. So he has a different role, and you can maybe tell us a little bit how this student activism takes place. So you're in charge of, I think, security for the speakers. Have you seen the kind of intimidation, harassment? What is it like on the security, providing security for speakers? And we have had questions earlier about why you guys are protesting now. Okay, please.
For the safety of the VIP and how to manage when you meet some harassment from government or any agent from the government. As you know, police, local agent, and military. The first one, the safety of the VIP, we use police protocol to protect and serve them. The first one, VIP must safety. And the second one, the author in the mob, as you know, the protest have to safety too. And the last one is our team have to safety because the manpower is the best to control everything. If we can control our power, we can control our protest. As you've seen, when we meet some accident, as you know, when government agent try to harassment, the first one we have to be the negotiation to deal with them. If you see when they try to take your picture, you have to take him back, and you can check him. Where you from? Where you work for? You can know because this is a rule. It's a rule under the law. You seen when you seen his card, and you ask for the reason why he want to take a picture, he want to harass us. This is the basic harass. This is take a picture. And the next one, at Thammasat University last Fed Mob on 10 August, I was police coordinator. We seen some problem about the sign from the protest. They talk about Mr. Anon Nampa. Talk about the reason of what he want. Then the police call to me to check and screen this sign. Is that are you okay for this? I go to check, and I think that what have a reason that not hate speech, that good reason, and that can show us in the protest. Then I told the police, you don't care about this because this is under the democracy. This is not hate speech. If I told police, if I seen about the sign that was hate speech, I have to stop them by ourselves. And the last one, this about very dangerous, is following to their safe house or their home. This is very hard to manage. The police, before they try to arrest, they have to scout on speaker home. Under the process, they have to use about 2 weeks to confirm the speaker stay in this house, and they try to arrest. And they use undercover police to police. This is the harder, the hardest because they have to our guard have to check and they have our guard have to monitor who is the police and who is the other one, who is the some basic people. We have to check all for VIP safety. Yeah, it's about like this.
Okay, so in fact, when you have protests, then you have procedures, protocols, measures for providing security, right? How difficult has it been? These are peaceful protests. You're saying the police have been very cooperative. Have the police been helpful, in fact? Okay. And do you see any, what would be, in the weeks ahead when you have these activities, what would be your fear? If there's violence and, where would that come from? How could we maintain peaceful activities?
When I seen some, as you seen, our flash mob or any protest, the main point is peaceful, not violence. We have, if that have violence, that mean that not from my side, that not from our side, that I think that from other side, that not mean anymore at all, as you see, that police side, military side, and other side who think different from us. But I confirm that not only from that not from my side, because our side is very peaceful and they try to deal and negotiate, not for fight by use a gun, a knife, a Molotov or grenade. That not on our point. Our point for this, when we have to deal with the fighting or something that have too many minutes, we have to maintain about the first one. We use the plan 2 minutes, like military from soft to harder. That as you seen, when someone who try to show his side but that was different side, we have to stop them to talk, to deal. Please do not show this for your safety. Please, if he okay, he will down the side. But if he not okay, he try to show his side. We have to bring that what you you to talk to them to go to
Administrative center?
yeah, to bring him to administrative center. Yes. If this is the softly plan, if we have the harder, when someone who have the weapon, as the knife, the gun, and any explosive thing, we have to use the police because we can manage by ourselves. Police is the best one because he have the law and his rule. If I try to stop them by myself, such as bring his weapon to me and I give to police, that I can do because I don't have the law on my hand to do this. I have to use the police process and police protocol to do like this. And the last one, if we have the bad situation, like police and military try to clear us, like like lectured in 2010. As you seen, the military try to kill. This is the best, no, the worst case, the worst situation that have to manage. The first one, we have to tell the protest to get down on the ground and do not run, because when they run, they can be the point that military can choose and shot them. For their safety, we have to use like this pen, salt to harder.
Okay, I'll just ask you one quick last question before we pass the microphone over to Yarisa. So on the student side for security, you actually have measures and means to maintain control and restraint on the student side, right? By working with the police, right? Now, some people would say that who taught you all of this? How do you know these measures and procedures? Who came up with them? One question we had earlier before you came was that, is anyone manipulating you, putting you up to this, masterminding, organizing behind you? How do you know these measures?
On the measure, I have many people to get me on this point, and I have to ask many who know on this side, as my friend who was the police and my friend who was a soldier, to add some protocol and many process to bring the protest to be for their safety first.
So among yourselves, you learn how to do this, because some of you students have been maybe in the military before, drafted or something. Okay, thank you very much, Yuthachai. Let me move over to Yarisa. Yarisa, you first year with our faculty, in fact, but you were with the Trimudom High School, Trimudom Siksa, which is kind of a top high school, known as a top high school in Thailand. We have a lot of students from Trimudom at Juฬา. Trimudom was one of the first high schools to carry out political activities, let's say. This time, why high schools? A lot of people are puzzled and curious. Why high schools? High schoolers, you are 15, 16, 17. Why are you undertaking these protests, and what led you to it? Is it a fashion? Is it a fad? Is it because other people are doing it, so you're doing it? And how widespread is this? Is it just you and a few other friends, or is it a lot of the people at Trimudom and a lot of the other high schools?
So first of all, thank you for inviting me. Why are high schoolers protesting? Well, first of all, kids my age, and we're talking about 15 to 18 years old here. Kids my age have been living in chaos and in instabilities our whole life. We lived through two coups d'etat, one in 2006, another one in 2014. And in between those was the extreme polarization of Thai politics, which come with so much violence and which included the massacre that Yuthachai mentioned, the massacre of the Red Shirt Group by the government in 2010. And now during those times, many of us were too young to comprehend what had been going on. And meanwhile, our parents and the school were forced feeding us this kind of black and white narrative of what was happening. But now I think the turning point for many of us was the access to the internet. You see, with that access, we could get to new sets of information, the kind that contradicts what we had lived with our whole life. It contradicts the reality that we lived with and that were taught to us at home and at school. And and most importantly, with those new information, we realized that national politics impacted us as students more than we presumed. You see, because the conservative family values and the authoritarian culture in schools, which have been oppressing us for so long, were the direct results of the authoritarian regime and the fact that the conservative has so long been in power. And it's like we finally saw the big picture. And we understood why we were feeling so frustrated with what we were living with and are still living with. It's all connected. You know, the financial struggles that some of our families might be facing, the tradition that limits us and violates us, and what else? The education systems that keeps pushing us away from knowledge. It's all connected. But even then, even when we found out the problem, even when we knew what the root was and is, we still didn't know what to do. All we could do was going on Twitter, going on Facebook, and voicing our opinions, but that was the end of it. But until earlier this year, the Future Forward Party was disbanded quite unfairly, and that was like the long-awaited last straw for many Thai people. And the students, university students began to come out. And personally for me, when I saw that, you know, the pictures, the people showing up their phones and with the light on, the flashlights, and there were like thousands of people in both in Chulalongkorn and Kasetsart and many other universities. Personally, it was so powerful, and I felt like I want to be a part of it. And I felt like I wanted to do something more. And most importantly, you see, university students, they were like a couple of years older than us. So what I thought was, well, if they can do it, we can do it too. We're just a couple of years younger, and in a couple of years, we're gonna be in university. So why not start coming out now? Why not start protesting and showing the world that there aren't only university students, but also high schoolers and sometimes middle schoolers who are frustrated with the situation. So that's what we decided to do. In February, we organized our very first protest in Triam Udom Siksa School. Around 300 people attended, including students, teachers, and alumni. So, and after that, there were more protests in many, and I must say many schools, not just Triam Udom. There's Sri Vitaya, there are Badin Desha, but I must say that some of them aren't as lucky as us. With the size of Triam Udom Siksa, we have 3,000 students. It's quite a big school, and we're in the center of the city, so we are out there. The media are looking at us, so that's why the teachers didn't dare to stop us from demonstrating, but other schools aren't as lucky, and they were being harassed by the teachers, by other students, and it's really sad to see. So yeah, but still, there are many schools and many students that wanted to come out. And yeah, and after February, the whole movement across the country were quite halted because of the pandemic. But after that, I think the pandemic quite put more fire behind the movement. People got more angry with the government. It showed us how not ready the government is. And we continued to protest. After the pandemic, in Triam Udom, we have organized 2 more protests in yeah, in order to support the outside movement also. And we have more plans and yeah, to unite students across the country and to join the Free People and other organizations. Now you may ask, are we being brainwashed? Well, similarly to what Ms. Sugriya said, if we're being brainwashed, it's by the junta. It's by the failure of the junta, failure of the system. That is what is brainwashing and that is what is manipulating us, the failure of the system. It's the uneven footpath. It's the late buses. It's, what else? It's the wearing black socks instead of whites in school and being harassed by it, by the teachers. And it's the tear of those who have lost their life and the tears of those who have lost their loved ones to the cruelty of the government. Those are the things that drive us forward. Yeah. And well, talking about brainwash, I would say that some of us were brainwashed, like I said earlier, by the system, by the curriculum, by our parents. We received one-sided information, but I think I could wholeheartedly say that right now we have managed to break out of that. Now, what's next? What if the government continues to ignore us? What if the government doesn't heed to our demands? Well, we have no choice but to advance our fight, right? And I think that is what's happening right now also. We are joining force. There aren't only students, there are people, there are workers, there are the LGBTQ community. We are all uniting because this is about all of us, and we have to unite to fight against the regime. We are not here to change the players of the game. We're not just trying to get Mr. Prayut out. We're not just trying to get Mr. Pravit out. But we are trying to change the game, not the players, the game. We are trying to change the rules because that is what was keeping us stuck for years. So we are trying to change that. Like Mr. Griya said, it's the constitution. That is why one of the 3 demands is to draft a new constitution, because that is what regulates the game. And it was written by only one group of people. And besides uniting with many other factors and organizations, one of the advancements of our fight is what I'm doing right now. It's talking in front of you all, is trying to gain international attention. Because, and may I quote Mr. Martin Luther King Jr., injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So I want to remind you all of that. And it's not just us. It affects the whole world. So, and may I say something? Everything that's been happening, the coup after coup in Thai politics, one of the very first, and I think Mr. Jadrun might know more about this than me, but from what I've learned, might we go back to Mr. Sarit Thanarat's coup d'etat in, what was the year? 1957. During that regime of Sarit Thanarat and later on Thanom, there was one ideology that re-emerged, and it was called royal nationalism. And may I say that in the last decades of Thai politics, Thai military and the monarchy aren't the only perpetrators. In the 1958 memorandum from the American Bureau of Intelligence and Research, it states that, and I quote, "The formation of a revolutionary council in Thailand does not represent a coup d'etat." What does that mean? That means the United States of America supported and approved the coup d'etat by Sirit Thanarat in 1957. So, again, this is an international issue. We have to solve it together. So please, I think it's time for the world to defend the very values they claim to uphold, and that is democracy and human rights. So
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you very much, Larissa. When you mentioned the black socks, you mentioned earlier about the authoritarian culture in schools. Is that what you mean by the authoritarian culture, the black socks? So the high schoolers, they are also upset. They're upset because is it because the system is too tight? Is it not enough freedom in schools? And just very quick.
Yeah, it's the whole thing that the authoritarian culture are shown in many ways. That the rules about the uniform and stuff, which I could get into, but that's going to be like another hour. And it's also the curriculum by the states that, if you look at it, maybe history and stuff. The history is quite state-oriented. It's that there are censorships everywhere, and that's why if students don't learn by themselves and study by themselves outside school, they aren't going to see the real picture. They're going to continue to receive one-sided information.
Just a very quick follow-up for all three of you. Very quick response and reaction. Had the coup in 2014, May 2014, 2557. Had it stayed not too long, had it provided some promising prospects for the Thai economy, had the economy done better, had the coup not stayed too long, had the constitution been a little bit more balanced, do you think maybe the students would be okay with that? Maybe they would accept that? Because maybe is it the most important priority for you is about the future of jobs and livelihoods, right? What would you say, Sugriya? A very kind of a quick reaction. Is that if they did a better job with the coup, if the coup didn't stay too long, better constitution, then we wouldn't be here today. Is that the case?
The point is the coup d'etat is the big point, because if it's not about the time, it's about to stop this cycle of coup d'etat.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so it's beyond just the coup in the last 60 years. It's something bigger and broader.
Yes.
The system.
Because now we got like 13 times of coup d'etat in Thailand.
Yeah, 13. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay, Dr. Jet, I feel like they've been talking about us, our generation. So a couple of questions for you. First, all this discussion, all the controversy, everything, the buck, as they say, eventually the buck stops with the Constitution, right? I mean, eventually it's the rules of the system. And can we say now, I think from the government, from the Senate, political parties, everyone seems to say that the constitutional amendment is warranted, that is needed. So can we then say, by implication, that the 2017 Constitution is very flawed? I think it's very flawed. And in your experience and expertise as a law professor, but also having been a constitution drafter in the past, we've had 3 constitutions in 23 years. 97 Constitution, 2007 Constitution, 2017 Constitution, and each time it seems the Senate, right? First it was fully elected in 1997. Then in 2007 it was half elected. 2017, fully appointed. So that's one controversy. But what do you see as a way out for us through the Constitution? What kind of amendments and what kind of a drafting committee would we need now? That's the first kind of Constitution question. Second one, just between us, you know, we and this generation they're talking about. Sometimes when you guys were laughing about the brainwash, I asked myself, like, why are you laughing? Well, probably because you think that we're the ones who've been brainwashed. So what, you know, in our generation, how do we reconcile with, you know, the young, and also for the young generation too, you better pay attention how to make peace with us, the older people, because we couldn't help being brought up in this system, right?
Yeah. Well, I think I can put the two questions together, especially the theme of today's panel. Okay, your last point saying common future. I think when we are seeking common future together, the issues of being brainwashed, the conservative points of older people, the parental guide, which is seen as oppression, okay, the history long before all of us here, when they started this country, when any country started, when the whole world started, all the way up to us, we can't really just say that they are archaic, they're bad, we're good with the future. Our parents is doomed. They're going to be dead. Our grandparents already died. I think if we are saying things like that, and as Ajahn Thitinan asked me, I don't think the hit is upon any one of us here, but it's upon anyone older than those people who call themselves young generations. If that's the case, it's very hard, very tough. And I don't see the practicability to find common future together. Because we will not have common future, we will have a separate future. My grandparents will have their own separate future. My parents, myself, the younger generation, like my son and daughter, like pretty much yourself, will have a separate future. We might walk parallel to each other towards the future, but we will not have the common future. If we want the common future, I think Ajahn Thitinan here is right, that we have to find grounds that we can connect. And I think one of the powerful aspects of the internet that you all mentioned is the connectivity of the whole world. It links the whole world. It's not separating the whole world. So if we use the internet to dissect and separate each other, then we are using it as a bad and a downside tool. If we want to use it as a positive tool, then we use it to make an interconnection between all around the world. If we use it in that sense, when we are talking about democracy, you will be opening eyes to democracy. Talking about history, you might walk all the way back to when democracy started. If you talk about the monarchy, you might also walk all the way back to the first time in whatever era that a monarchy started, and how each monarch turned itself into what it is today, whether or not it is still there. Then you might see the picture. If you look into each of the religion scriptures, you might also find how kings and queens or any leader was appointed by maybe the Almighty God or by whatever means. Okay? Then if you look all the way from there to now, you might see the questions and the answers in itself. Then if you use such grounds to connect with people, your point will be deeper stronger, and more practicable. Okay. The reason I answer Ajahn Thitinan that the two questions can be combined is that though I'm in the drafting of the Constitution, for if we combine the Bhawan Sak's draft, which failed to pass the National Council for the National Reform Council, together with the Michai, I was in the draft for 4 or 5 years. I went through all the organic laws. Okay, so I'm not going to represent it and I'm not going to defend it. But if we are going to walk from here to somewhere, I think at this point it is accepted that the constitutional reform or constitutional amendment is what to be had. And to walk or to join hands in hands to the common future together. Then if that's the case, I think you might be able to make a division of the main part of the Constitution now and the provisional part of the Constitution. What were mostly criticized are from the provisional parts of the Constitution. When you talk about the Senate, Ajahn Thitinan mentioned about all appointed senators. The all appointed senators came from the provisional part of the Constitution. If you look at the main part of the Constitution, Article 107 didn't say anything about being appointed. It was a sort of indirect election where people from all walks of life, starting from 10 groups, actually it was designed for 20 groups. And we also discussed that maybe 20 groups is not enough. It might have to be 40, 50 groups, whatever. Okay. But leave this to the organic law. Then 20 groups was set in the main part of the organic laws. So anyone in those 20 groups can join in from the municipal level to the provincial level and to the national level in order to become one of the 200 senators. So that's the main part. If we think that the problem here is the provisional part, and it's because this sort of senators, then eliminate this part. Secondly, if you think it's wrong in the utilization, if such utilization is wrong, whether or not it has been actually done, when we talk about the Senate, since the government or the coalition combined at the point that they were electing General Prayut as Prime Minister, they got the majority of the House. So when they got the majority of the House, when people were saying that the senators were electing General Prayut, they didn't need the senators, though they wrote the senators' action, the senators' function in there, but they didn't use it. So when they didn't use it, you can say that because it was not needed, the writing of it into the Constitution, whichever part doesn't make sense, eliminate it. Thirdly, the problem, I think, came from the electoral system. The new electoral system is a proportional system. The proportional system is designed in order to gather all the votes that can possibly be dropped out or sunk somewhere. But yes, the calculation of the proportional system is very difficult and complicated. It must be explained from the beginning. The Election Commission did not explain how it is to be calculated. Therefore, it ended up that lots of votes from the future forward were taken away from such party to be given to the Palang Pracharat, which is not true by calculation and by the system designed long before there were the two parties. At the time that the system, the calculation was designed, that time there was no future forward party, there was no Palang Pracharat, not at all. But it was not explained. Therefore, the problem came here. Okay. So if it's the problem because the electoral system, then if it's the total of the electoral system eliminated or amend it, revise it. If it's just part of it, then take the partial part that is wrong to make it right. I think we go point by point like this, and that will be the one part of the Constitution. I think the other two parts of the Constitution to be discussed is the freedoms, or you might want to say liberties or rights. Okay, that part. I think the main part of rights and liberties of the people were taken from the 1932 Constitution and combined with many, many, many constitutions, maybe being a little bit revised, maybe being a little bit changed and altered. And it might not strike the balance that you really want today, because it might seem to be obsolete in pretty much some of the sense in which they were used long ago. But they cannot cope with, let's say, the present and the future. Then I think take that part, talk about it, and make changes to it. The last very important part is the king and the people. I think this is historic, and not only historic, it is the future as well. So if we want to merge history into the future, we cannot get past the present. So let's talk about the present, how you see the link between the past, the history of the monarchy, together with the people, all the way up to today. What does this have to do with the Constitution? And how should this be located, situated in the Constitution? If we find grounds, and I think we can find that grounds in talking about this issue, in the council, in the committee, that will be drafting the Constitution, then there is no need to instigate hatred on the stage. We talk about other things, and I can commend that when the 10 issues were proposed on stage on the 10th of this month, and it was alleviated down to sort of a reform or to make democracy with the king as head of state under the Constitution becomes true. I think that is the point in which we can discuss. And the best place to discuss this issue is within the council or the committee that will be drafting the Constitution. Not like what the Gao Klai was trying to push, that we are going to amend chapter 1, chapter 2. No need to do that. It will be another type of oppression against each other. When you were saying that the military was oppressing you, somehow you might be instigating their hatred as well. So we are not going to confront each other. So walk from there. If now your point, especially what Ajahn Thitinan was saying, okay, I think the two no-nos, no coup, no national government, I think you get that. I don't think anyone will be staging the coup here, and no one will be establishing the national government. Okay, the 3 proposals that you want, I think the no intimidation. Okay, I think that's fine, and I think that's doable, and I pretty much agree that when you are being threatened, when there are intimidations against all these movements, then there will be fear, and there will be untrust, and many other issues linking. And if you don't get to take some of your freedoms and to limit some of your freedoms, then you will be boosting and make it combustible to another ground, another level. So that, I think, talkable. Okay. The Constitution amendment, as I said, I think now the government and the senators and everyone else around accept pretty much that there shall be an amendment to the Constitution. And at the end of the constitutional amendment, you will get dissolution of the parliament. Because once you have the new Constitution, you have a new electoral system and all these other things, then why should you keep the old parliament? You will want the new parliament. Then you get the dissolution of the parliament. So all of what you need now and the future that we are looking together to be common, I think it can be done within this, whatever you call council or committee or anything. That's why I combined the 2 questions to be one.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ajahn. Ajahn Jade was in the drafting committee of a draft that did not pass, not the Michai draft, but the Bowansak draft back in 2015, I think. So you're saying that the provisional clause, that's the problem, the 5-year provisional clause, because this allows the Senate to select to vote for the Prime Minister in Parliament. And with a 5-year clause, they can do it twice, right? So
Yes, you can do it twice. Yeah, I think that was designed, and that was the problem. I don't think that people mind that much about the last round of election or selection that the Senate didn't have to participate or didn't actually participate that strongly. But the second round, that's why I was saying that you can use the reason from the first round of selection to be the rationale for not having it for the second round, because it was not used in the first round. Why would you want to use it in the second round? You can knock that off because they actually want the second round.
Yeah, I have not heard from the student speeches about the stipulations and the details of constitutional change that you want. There's one issue here. Do the students, are they demanding rewrite a new one? Or would amendments of the 2017 Constitution be acceptable? That's one. And then in terms of the drafting committee, I haven't heard what you guys are thinking. And then what Ajahn Jet discussed about the king and people. This has been now enumerated in the 10-point manifesto on August 10th. But from what you said, Ajahn Jet, you think that this should be discussed within the drafting committee, but I think the students, they wanted to have a broader discussion about the king and people, role of monarchy in the constitution.
Yeah, I think from what I heard from all the students, and I'm talking to many of them, and especially the leaders too, they were saying that because they felt that the amendment will still be done under the 2017 Constitution, which is called, or which they feel is the coup d'etat constitution. So they want to redo the whole process again to get the new constitution. If that is so, then my point is even open broadly. Because when you draft the constitution, and if you go back to 1996 when they were drafting the constitution, they were asking the people, they were telling the people what was written. So that will be the point in which I said that you can make it broad. Okay, it doesn't have to be narrow, that it is in a square room, but it can be open to all the people in the country as well as around the world, that they can share, they can join in, they can make comments, and they can even share information. Then from there, you can pick and you can think and you can choose and then you can write. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to move this conversation now to Kun Jaturon. But before I do that, I just want to introduce there's one kind of ultimatum demand that the student protesters have made, and that is that we have to get rid of this Senate by the end of September. This is a very daunting demand because it's kind of ultimatum. So we will come back to this issue, but I want to raise that. Kun Jaturonครับ Yes, thank you for waiting patiently. I know you would have a lot to say about all of this, but today, in the 1970s, I think you said at one point that, when there was a big change in 1973, October 14, big student protests led to the ouster of the military dictatorship at that time. There were also protests in Chiang Mai, but the Chiang Mai students did not know what happened in Bangkok. They had to wait until the next morning, right, to go to the town center and make a long-distance call to Bangkok to learn from their peers, their friends, that, hey, the military dictatorship is gone. But today, it's instantaneous. The kind of the empowerment from this internet technologies, information technologies is unbelievable, right? So for you were there decades ago. What you're seeing now, what do you think of it? What are some of the similarities, and where do you think this could be going as a student movement? In the 1970s, of course, ousting a dictatorship, but then eventually ended up with a crackdown, and student movement was crushed in October 1976. Do you fear that this could be something along those parallels?
Thanks for having me here again. I was a student first year student in 1973, and then I was a student leader in 1976. I've been asked to talk about student movements in the past from time to time, but now it's already 44 years. I'm still asked to talk about student movement and what happened then. I hope I can share some experience and there can be some lessons learned to all parties involved to help strengthen the democratization movement of the country, and also to prevent the conflict and violence in this country. The situation then was very different from now, as Kun Titinan just mentioned that I told him earlier. But I think I should start with the situation, the political circumstances at the time. Before 1973, the country was under authoritarian rule for too long, for many, many years, with some very small intermission. There was an undemocratic constitution, and then there was an election, but the government lasted for only a year or so. And then it was under authoritarian rule again. There was no constitution. The situation then, there were corruption cases around, abuse of power, interference to the judiciary, to the court. And the economic situation was bad. I remember that Thai people, Bangkokians, have to be in line, in queuing, to buy rice from the government organization. And since there was no constitution, and the drafting took so long, took like forever, so students' movement gradually gained momentum from protesting against something like raising the bus fare from 50 stang, that's half of a baht, to 75 stang. And they were successful. They were fighting and they were protesting in university. They were protesting against, there was a movement against Japanese products, persuading people to buy Thai products. After some time, students came up with a demand for a constitution. So the issue was just from no constitution to a constitution. It's very simple, not as sophisticated like today. There was division or divide among the elite then, including in the army. So when the student and activists who demand demand a constitution, 13 of them were arrested, and then there were movement in the street, rally in the Thammasat University, and then in the street. I came from Chiang Mai because it was the end of the first semester, and then joined the demonstration. And then on the 13th of October, And then 14th of October, the generals, the leader of the government then were had to flee the country. And then we got constitution, we got democracy. After that, I talk about the October 14 incident because some people also compare the present situation to the October 14 rather than October 6 when ended up with massacre and a coup. But after 1976, students and people were exercising their freedom and liberties. Workers were demanding higher wages. Farmers in the north, in some other parts of the country, were demanding lower land rent, which used to be like half of the crop of the produce. People in all walks of life were exercising liberties, and that was a threat to the elite at the time. Student movement tend to alienate themselves from the general public to some extent. Some of the student leaders and academics are impassioned with the socialist ideology. But of course, the mainstream in university and in other places, I still think that Thai students and activists were still influenced by liberal democratic ideology. But to a large extent, there's some activists, some student leaders were impassioned with socialism. While as you know, three of our neighboring countries changed to socialist at that time in about 1975. And the elite, some of our allies, superpower, were afraid of Thailand being communist. They were talking about the domino theory. Right? So in that situation, when students mobilize more and more, a lot of student leaders were killed, including a lot of farmers leaders, especially in the north, were killed. And then in the end, actually the movement or the demands of the movement were not dangerous to the society at all. They were fighting against the returning of some generals to the country, the generals that had to flee from the country. One day they came back. So the students protested against that. And most of the demands still was about democracy. But there was a set up a conspiracy, a fabrication to malign students, and then they prompted up with some charge, especially about the lèse-majesté. Then this ended up with the massacre at Thammasat University and a coup in that evening. And then the country became under authoritarian rule again for several years. And it gradually developed to what we call semi-democratic system. which lasts for many years. That's the political environment then. Now, if we compare the situation then, or the student movement then, with the student movement now, there's something in common, but a lot of differences. There's something in common, like students are very energetic. Their students tend to be idealistic. They don't think about themselves. They think about the society, think about the country. And that is the strength of student movement. And I think in two different situations, but there are things in common. But a lot of differences. There were small number of universities then compared to now. There are a lot of universities. Not many students then, like right now. Students then didn't have to think much about their future. It's not like today when you have to think about your future after you graduate, whether or not you can find a job. But then the students then didn't have to think a lot. The economic situation is not so tight like this. The education system was not an issue. So students just learn about what happened in the society, what happened to the country. We went to the rural area to learn how people in the rural area lived. But now education system is a problem. As a former education minister, I can say that we try to reform the education system. We talked about maybe 10 to 15 years ago, we were talking about critical thinking. Later we were talking about the skills for 21st century. So that probably have some effect now, but it's not enough. Some students have critical mind now. Some students brave enough to speak in the public, to demonstrate. But the educational system fails to improve or develop in the past, say, 5 to 10 years. And that affects the student. Now there's a coexistence of 3 crises. One is the economic crisis, worse than ever before. Political crisis. The political system, especially the constitution, is the obstacle to the adaptation of this country to the disrupting world. And then educational crisis in the system. So we can understand why students now feel that there's no future for them, because they know that students who are going to graduate next year will have a big problem in finding jobs. But more problematic than that is what they are taught in universities are not relevant to the job in the future. And so we can understand also that students in high school or even secondary school are thinking about what's going to happen to them. And then they learn about the history. I think the access to internet, access to information and knowledge is very different. When I was in school, some students were carrying a small book, smaller than a cell phone, about general knowledge. And we talk about general knowledge. which is the highest mountain in the world or something like that. That's, students who are knowledgeable have small book like this carry around. Now, there are maybe trillion of books like that in a small smartphone for the students now, right? Very different. Students now learn a lot about history. They are knowledgeable of the history of this country. They have a profound understanding of the political system of the country. When I was a student, we were talking just about whether there will be a constitution from 0 to 1, from none to a constitution. But now they can talk about the sophisticated system, what they want from the constitution. So this is different. The very different that Kun Thitinan just mentioned is about the communication. When I was a student, I had to go in town in Chiang Mai from the university to the town and wait to make a phone call to Bangkok. When I was student leader, we came to Bangkok to join a meeting of the National Student Center of Thailand, maybe once a month. During crisis, maybe once a week. We don't know what happened in Thammasat. We just know that there was some shooting in the night, and then wait until in the morning. And then we had to decide to end the demonstration over there because we couldn't get any information. If there is something some lesson to learn, now probably it's not very easy for students to be prompted up with some charges, because it can be clarified in a matter of minutes. Why over there, people all over the country didn't know what happened at Thammasat. They said, well, they're doing something about lèse-majesté. There were some weapons, heavy weapons in the university. There were tunnels in the university. Nobody know what really happened in Thammasat University. But now you have telephone, you have social media. The situation is very different from that in the past. So if there is any suggestion, I would say that there should be a constitutional amendment with the participation of people all over the country. The issues to be amended should be open to the public, because Article 255 has already said that the system where this democracy with the king as head of state cannot be changed. Other than that, there can be amendment. But more important than that is participation from people. I think that people should allow to share different opinions. There should be some campaign from either side during the drafting and during the referendum. And the government should stop intimidating student activists or people who are involved in the movement. And they should stop engendering the hatred, especially the government should not try to malign the student movement. And then there should be a dialogue concerning the demands of the student, the 3 demands plus 2 dreams, and then the 10-point manifesto. I would say that there can be different opinions on this, but fundamentally, all of these demands or the manifesto can be seen as constitutional because they want to change this through constitutional procedure. You want to change the constitution, you go by the constitution, go by the book. You want to change the laws, you change the law to the parliament. So nothing is unconstitutional or illegal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kappa Kunjaturan. I want to open the floor now to questions, comments. I also want to invite our viewers on the ISIS Facebook. If you have questions, you can write them in, and we try to field as many as we can in the limited time that we have. Just drawing the parallels you did, there's no Cold War. The context is very different. Cold War, I think that communism, you mentioned Indochina fell to communism within a space of 6 weeks in April and May 1975. And that provided the military kind of back regime a pretext for kind of a crackdown and pushback in 1976, I think. So no Cold War, big change. You guys were born after the Cold War. Unlike us here, we grew up during the Cold War, so we had to sing martial songs in school, For you, you're probably born late 1990s after the Cold War, so there's something very different about the context. Back then, they fought for ideology. You mentioned they were concerned about society, Thai society, making Thai society better ideology. This time, from what I hear from the speeches, they're fighting for themselves, for their own future. Not so much, you said democracy, and beyond that, equality, that's an ideal. But I think also I hear a lot of speeches about the future, your own future, your own personal interests. The economy, recession early 1970s, but from 1960 to 1997, the Thai economy expanded over 6% a year. This time the Thai economy is going to contract more than 10%, forecast for 12%, and it will not be like a V-shaped recovery. So basically the Thai economy has very dim prospects for the next 5 years. It's a big difference. Just one thing, last thing I want to draw as a parallel. Back in the late 60s, young people fought for change and to kick out a military-backed regime, military dictatorship, and they succeeded in 1973 after a lot of struggle. But then in the mid-1970s, once they got that freedom, it became, Thailand became a bit unruly. I mean, the political situation became very unstable, a lot of protests and so on. So I also wonder this period, if the students succeed in their demands, some if not all of their demands, once you have the freedoms that you want, chance to write a new constitution, let's say, that this period, once you get what you want, actually can also be dangerous, because then you think about democracy, you think about dictatorship, a lot of people will be thinking about anarchy. In a situation where you have no stability, no order, and then this is when student movement could be alienated from a lot of other people, older people especially. I know I want to hear more, we all want to hear more from the students, but I want to now open the floor to questions or comments also from the Facebook. If there are questions or comments, you're welcome to pitch them in. Ambassador from Poland, Dubinowski. There's a microphone right in the middle there, Ambassador.
First of all, thank you very much for organizing such an exciting debate. It was, nowadays, I think it's really important. That's well done, so congratulations to all the speakers. But my question is to all our potential leader in the future, leader to be. So it means to all the students. Because Surya just mentioned that democracy is not a goal itself, but is the tool to achieve equality. Could you please elaborate a bit more about this issue? What you mean by equality, and if, as future leaders, you have some sort of discussion among yourself how you can see and what you mean by this equality in particular. Thank you.
Okay, so equality, this is a blanket term. It's very sweeping. You mean equality under the law? What are the parameters of this equality that you've mentioned, Sukriya? And is it widely discussed among your friends and your colleagues?
Okay, two main equality for me is one is the law, to enforcing the law, equality of enforcing the law, because nowadays, like the case, if you know the Red Bull, the Red Bull case, the elite in Thai, so in Thai society, we got 1% of people who is elite. Then they can spend their money to disrupt the justice process. Then is if if you are the person who don't have much money or the lower class, the process will arrest you soon. But it's different if you are elite in Thai. It shows very obvious. This is one, equality in law. Second is equality in gender. We are promoting about okay, it's about the marriage between same-sex marriage. Okay, yeah, for gender equality. But Thai, I'm not sure. The ministry trying to put the law, some law in state that it doesn't mean the same-sex marriage, but it's not include all the demands of LGBTQ demands that we ask for. This is two main for me, and also education system for equality. Now we got many problems, such as school. We cannot provide facility and teachers or the curriculum to equal in Thai. If it's equal, is what the best school, or it's not equal right now. Yeah. To also the public health, we cannot provide all the tools or the doctor, the physician around Thailand. Have pretty much gap between capital and another province, especially uptown. This is what's unequal now.
Okay, thank you very much. So it's equality under the law, and also this income wealth disparity tied into it. The 1% that owns us, the 65% of the country, they get to have certain privileges. You also mentioned gender equality, education, in access to education. So equality broadly defined, I think broadly defined. We have some questions from our Facebook viewers. If there are any other questions and comments from the floor, please just line up behind the microphone. I'm just going to ask Jatru on this. I think it's something that you would have a lot to share. the elites back in your time, student leader, 70s, and the elites today. Do the elites today, you think that they would relinquish, give in, and make concessions and compromise and give up some power and some privilege, you think, today? From what the students demand? Yeah, the students demand, constitution, the elites, the ruling elites, the people who run the country, would they give up some of their power and privilege to make compromises and concessions with the student demands? Did it happen in the 1970s?
Yeah, actually, it doesn't depend only on the movement of the student, but depends on what the majority of Thai people think. And if you look at the demands of the student, we can interpret that they don't think this government fits to solve the problem of the country. So they ask for dissolution of the House and another general election. They ask for constitutional amendment because they think that the system is a problem. So if Thai people think that now it's time to change, they want to change the government, and it seems like a lot of people are now thinking that the government cannot perform well enough. Then they will reach a conclusion that in order to change the government, it's unavoidable to amend the constitution. What I'm saying is their demands are in accordance with the interests of the majority of Thai people. And if people think in the same way, the government and the elite will have to give up some of their power at least. And I believe that the system and the government cannot remain as they are now. There must be some change. I cannot predict what kind of changes will take place, but there must be some change.
Okay, just to take that further, a step further, there's a question here, so what positions are hard now, hard positions, so government, they're not going to quit, General Prayut, Prime Minister will stay, and the senators don't seem like they're going to go away, so the position is pretty hard on that side. Student demands also pretty clear, the three demands, the 2 no's, and even the manifesto, the 10-point statement that was read. What would have to happen? Where would a concession or some kind of there's a question about signaling. What move do we have to see, or can we hope to see from either side or both sides in order to de-escalate, in order to lower and diffuse these tensions that we're seeing mounting? So if the government says, okay, what would they have to do? Would they have to say, write a new constitution? Would that be enough for students to back off and stop, take a pause on protests? Would that be enough? The government says no intimidation, then would that be enough? And if they don't do anything or say anything, what would the students do next?
To rewrite the constitution is the point, but for in detail we need a
drafting committee? Yeah.
Drafting committee. That the drafting committee have to come from people will. That we have to discuss more about the issue base or the area base of the committee, but it have to come from people will, and people have to ask or question about the process. In this process, it's not in like last one or sinceปี 40
ถึง 997 1997.
1997 that we got area-based committee, but we also have like some academics who is the real one who write the constitution. This is how to fix the problem. Is people have to monitor the new constitution. Is the main point.
So your point is that there has to be more with public participation.
Yes.
Right. So in 1997, they had one representative for each province in the drafting assembly, together with 23 experts from law, politics, public policy, and so on. So something like that, maybe with public participation in the drafting process. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. We have a lot of questions. I'm sorry I cannot entertain them more. Any other question or comment from the floor? We just had, I just read questions from Kun Marasi, Ronatai, Kun Nalin, and then Alexander Book. I'll just read this question. You have some cooperation from or like-minded support from countries in the Milk Tea Alliance? Yeah? So we don't have time to get into that, but I think it's good to point out that these young people, not just in Thailand, but also in Hong Kong and Taiwan, right? Any other country? Any other country?
Hong Kong and Taiwan mainly, and we also like chat of India and Australia.
Okay, so other countries, young people also have some spirit of support and sympathy, I think, for the students here. Question from Phil Robertson, Human Rights Watch.
Hi, I'm Phil Robertson, Rongpo Asia, Human Rights Watch. Right now, the government seems to be arresting a lot of your leaders and other people who are associated with the movement for reform. How do you interpret this in terms of government intentions towards your movement? And how do you see this from a human rights perspective? The second issue, which is more of a comment, but it goes to the point of the Constitutional Drafting Committee, is that I have seen over the many years that I've lived in Thailand that the Thai government likes to rig these kind of committees to favor their interests. And that, in fact, we often see a case where you have 15 government supporters and 2 opponents on a committee. So I'm wondering how you would interpret how do you decide whether the government is bargaining with you in good faith on constitutional reform?
Okay, good. Two good issues here. Any other question or comment from the floor? Please, Ambassador Brian Davison from the UK.
So maybe just to follow up on Phil's excellent point, which he put more bluntly than a diplomat could. Dr. Jade and Tunchadron, you talked about the government. You said, I think I felt rather glibly, the government could accede to this idea of no intimidation. What evidence do you have to suggest intimidation is not going to continue? Because all the evidence suggests that it is. So what do you base this assertion that, yes, no intimidation is possible?
Okay, so issue about intimidation, harassment, threats, personal safety. There have been arrest warrants, there have been summons, and then some have been arrested. Maybe Yuthachai, maybe you can add to this. Do you have any realistic hope that the government will stop this intimidation and harassment of the student protesters and leaders? And on the one hand, they say they want to listen, but we're going to see more intimidation and harassment.
In the future, I hope this government will listen about who think different them. But as you see now today, this is the psycho game. As you know, they try to arrest the leader and try to arrest someone who can be the leader next from the next one who was arrested. As you see, when they was arrested, they have to get in the jail for 1 or 2 days, and now they free. That was a loop. As you see in the loop, that for a long time, as you see in Mr. Arnold, he was arrested for 3 times in this month. And the next one is Mr. Mai Panupong, who talk about less mergers and the constitutes. As you seen, who talk about this? They as the first one who the government want to arrest them, and the next one is about the state law. Many people, when they talk about this, they was arrested by the state law. Citizen, as you seen, 116 law. When they talk about this, they have to arrest by this law. That what a law. As you seen, this long time, I want the government to listen and do not use this. When we have the problem like this, we have to contact to Ajahn Thitinan, to any people, to many person who have many contact or can observe that about the harassment. They can get the pressure to the government. This is our hope. I don't want to see the many of speaker or leader get on was arrested, but I hope the government will give a chance to let the leader and speaker and the other to the government and talk about this, like the circle share, to share about the idea or anything else they want. Thank you.
Sukriya, would you be afraid, scared of arrest warrant, summons, government intimidation? Would that scare your student colleagues?
I used to have fear, but no, not now. One thing, because we don't have any power, we cannot against the government with the harassing or abusing, because we are people. The only thing we can do is information. We can inform our people, youth. Also, we do with now it's like century new era. So we collect the data. If you know Mob Data Thailand, we got information about harassing people, about the protests, and this is the point. When we got information, we can inform, we can educate people. This is a long-term game. It's not a short term that, okay, we come to protest, government go away, and this is the end. It's not. It's about to fight with the ignorant. It's about to fight with fight for the people to know this is not to be get used to. And now the government try to make our game more faster with actress. I won't call him leader because he is only like one speaker, and we are headless now. And now I just want to say, we are people. We don't have any power, but we got information, and I think the information will wide awake people, and people will pressure to the government finally.
Okay, thank you very much. We're out of time, but the other comment, just to leave on the table, is that eventually, Ajahn Jet, when the Constitution, not if, when the Constitution changes, there are constitutional changes either through a rewrite or amendment, the process of coming up with a Constitution drafting assembly, I think will be an issue, will be very contentious about who gets to be part of the writing process. So the question is that, the comment is that this has to be a publicly owned process or publicly accessible process. Otherwise, we might wind up with the same kind of problems. Thank you very much. I'm sorry we're out of time. And thank you very much you all for joining us, our audiences, excellencies, distinguished participants, and also our audiences in New Zealand and the US and so on across the region. Thank you very much. And I want to thank, please join me in thanking Kun Jaturon Chai Sang, Kun Yutichai Priyangsant Nern, and then Sukriya, Kun Yarisa, Dr. J. Tonavanik. Thank you very much. Until the next event. Thank you.